Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. We have an interesting program this time. We're going to be talking about the big fire we had in our county. And we have a couple experts to talk about how that's going. Our guests are Dave Fox, who's also an attorney, and Felicia Dunn, who's also active in hospice in our county. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Let's find out a little bit about you. Felicia, could you give me an idea of your background and how you get involved with this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up here in the county. I moved up to Mountain Ranch with my husband 15 years ago. He was born and raised in the area. We've made our home here, and I've been in various facets of the county. I was a teacher for a long time, have finished quite a bit of education, and ended up at Hospice of Amador and Calaveras as the thrift store assistant manager.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
But we had the opportunity to enjoy the services of hospice when my wife's mother passed away. About 3 weeks, and they were very, very nice people.
They are amazing angels.
Yeah. All right, David, tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'm an attorney in California. I used to be a federal prosecutor, and now I help people with personal injury matters or property damage issues. And so I'm helping people that have lost property from the fire and helping them get reimbursed from those that we feel are responsible for the fire. I work out of San Diego, and my partner has an office out of Lodi on these cases, and yeah, we're doing all we can to help those get back on their feet.
Well, thank you very much. Perhaps you can give us an overall picture of what we're going to be talking about when talking about the fire, but you've got some ideas on how we can get this information so it can be understood by our audience.
Yeah. I think one of the ideas is Felicia's been in the community for a very long time, and she can talk a little bit about some of the resources that have been available at the state, local levels, as well as private resources that have been helping people day to day. And I can also give some information a little bit about the litigation that's been going on, how we've been working with PG&E and some of the folks that have, we believe, have been responsible for the fire, and what we can do to get people reimbursed in that capacity. And so we thought we could talk a little bit about the resources, a little bit about the ongoing litigation, and just share what we can with the community.
Oh, that's very good. This should be a very interesting program. Felicia, where we are now, we're in the recovery, the fire's out.
Yes.
And so we're in the recovery portion of this. And what resources are available to those that need help?
A lot of the resources right now are local agencies that are coming together and providing one-to-one resources, meaning a specific family needs a trailer, a heater, a stove, and so the local agencies are working together to provide that for that individual. There are several agencies right now within Calaveras County and the surrounding counties that are raising funds and also providing 501(c) and 401(c)s so that the nonprofit can be expanded upon and put into place so that as people are recovering, donations can continue to come in. Right now, the donations that are being asked for, like I mentioned, are one-to-one. They are very specific for families' needs, and they are also asking for gift cards and other monetary donations so that they can start rebuilding. There's several organizations, like I mentioned, within the local area. Calaveras Grown is one of them. The Resource Connection is one of them. And there's so many to name that it would take up the whole half an hour. But really what I wanted to share with your audience is that there are several agencies that are kind of knitting together a weave of support, a web of support for individuals. And the hospice thrift store is providing vouchers for families that have lost everything through the Resource Connection. The Resource Connection is providing food. Friends of Railroad Flat School are providing donations to individuals, and there are individuals who are just neighbors who have lost their own houses and their own properties who are driving around providing things for people as needed.
I understand the Association of Realtors has raised thousands and thousands of dollars for temporary shelter for victims.
Absolutely. They've placed several. I think we're into the 20s now, but I might be wrong. That group has been just admirably strong in acquiring those donations and then disseminating those donations as needed. One of the challenges for any local organization is to try to vet and find the person that needs it the most, which is a difficult thing.
I see. Looking ahead, what things can government do to make things easier in this process?
We've been discussing some differences in the building department. One of the things that they've just adopted is called a post-recovery urgency ordinance, which will be put into place for the remainder of the building department's existence for any other natural disasters that may fall upon Calaveras County in the future. We previously did not have an ordinance for emergency solutions for building, and so Dave can actually talk a little bit about the specific ordinances, and I can fill in for any of those that
Yeah. There's certain ones that have been relaxed in the sense
Yes.
that now if you've lost your home, you can actually have a trailer on your property now in areas where you wouldn't have been able to before to help people, as long as you have septic and you have certain things taken care of on your house. There's also some fees that a lot of my clients, those that have lost their homes, are trying to rebuild, and then on top of that there's new codes that are requiring them to, say, have sprinkler systems or different types of fire-resistant type equipment on their property, and that on top of different taxes and fees have sort of hindered their building process. And so some of the things that we're trying to do, and some of it's successful, is just try to get the government to take more of a relaxed approach to some of these fees and see if we can diminish some of those fees to make it easier on those folks that have gone through an absolute nightmare, and at least maybe we can get some relief for not having to do maybe all of these things, or in the interim, just having a waiver on some of the fees.
I understand that that sometimes people can't go to their property because it needs to be cleared for hazardous materials.
Correct.
Excuse me. One of the things that we're concerned about is for the people to be allow themselves to be made whole as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
And there's so many people working toward that end.
Yes.
And there are some concern with perhaps too much regulation involved. I talked to our environmental officer in the county regarding the new laws regarding hazardous cleanup after a fire. And the question I had, has there ever been a case after a fire where anybody got sick from licking the ashes, or
Right.
because it has materials or not, and apparently there was no evidence of that at all. However, at it was explained to me at the Oakland fire, they come up with the idea of enforcing environmental cleanup,
Yeah.
so that there would not be a chance of somebody being harmed by hazardous materials in the ashes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I guess the key thing is how long does it take to clean the property up, and we assume that the person can't go there until it's cleaned up.
Right.
And so the quicker that happens, I suppose the less damage is done to the property owner.
Yes, and if you don't mind, my property was lost in the fire, and so
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
it's quite okay. Moving forward with that, one of the interesting blessings that I've had, just by pure geographic location, my property was one of the first ones cleared. My property was one of the first ones to receive power again. But even with the little bit of damage that I had a very small house and very cleared property. It was at least a week and a half of cleanup, and we still have not received a certification for hazmat being free and clear. So we cannot build yet. We cannot make plans to build yet because the county has not come back with our water and our soil testing. With that being said, our house, again, like I said, was very small, and our property was very cleared. Some of these properties were not in either case. They had large houses, lots of equipment, lots of other items on the property, outbuildings, sheds, barns, and
Right.
things like that that have been a lot of times inherited by the property owner because we live in a mining community. I think that's one of the other greater concerns with being hazmat cleared. We don't know what was in those brushes and those bushes and in those canyons and those creeks simply because they've been overgrown, and it was commonplace back in the early 1900s and probably into the 1940s to dispose of materials on your property either by burying it, throwing it into a man-made landfill, meaning on your own property.
Right.
And those are the items that I think have changed the approach to cleaning for our county specifically. Not knowing the mercury, the asbestos, those different types of metals that were in the burned area has made it much more difficult for cleanup. Not living in a grid and not having the access on roads and service has also slowed it down quite a bit.
I noticed you mentioned that you had your property cleared quite a bit before the fire.
Yes.
What was the distance from structure to that you had cleared?
My property was a very long 10 acres and a saddle, so 5 acres was what we called our livable space. Within that 5 acres, we had it completely cleared from the fence line. The challenge that we noticed was the ranch that we were originally a part of hadn't been cleared past the fence line. So within our fence line was pretty cleared, but because the ranch behind it hadn't been cleared, it came through with such a vengeance, it just wiped everybody on the one side out. And that whole neighborhood, all of our individual properties are very cleared to the fact where after we were able to return, we had CDF were continuing to show up because there were hot spots, and I live in an area where there were still houses and people living, so they would check on it periodically, and they were remarkably surprised at our loss considering how clear our property was.
So your whole home was burnt down completely?
Completely.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
So what does that say about clearing?
It's incredibly important, and it's, in this fire, it was not a simple saving grace, though. People's homes were cleared, people's properties were cleared, people had sprinklers on their roof systems. There was a lot of different personal effects that went into trying to save these properties, and there's very little consistency in this particular fire. A house next to ours was saved, and they have brush all the way up to their roof, and another house, down the street was completely cleared all the way around it, and they lost everything. So the consistency has been, I think, difficult for the citizens.
Did the brush burn that was close to the house?
It did. It burned. It almost is a perfect rectangle around their property. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, wow. I'm trying to think, what things did people do that work?
Oh, there's a lot of people that suggested their, and I don't have any names of it, but certain oils on wood sidings that were apparently fire resistant, more so than a paint or another sealant that was on a siding. Again, sprinklers on roof systems, water towers and water tanks were definitely a big plus on people's properties. But then access was an issue. I had a 2,500-gallon tank on our property. We left simply because there was one way in and one way out. Other individuals were able to save their properties with their water tanks on their properties.
By sprinklers or?
Sprinklers, fire bibs, water tanks, water trucks, whatever you possibly could do. Some people just turn their, middle of summer we were told not to water, but some people turn their sprinklers on for their properties.
Yeah, and I've seen that too. So we'll represent folks that just lost their homes, some that just lost their trees but kept their homes, and you'll see a common pattern of many of them. First of all, some of them lost their homes like Felicia's. There's nothing they could have done. That fire was just going to take it out, and as smart as she was and forward thinking, that fire was going to do it. But I would say, collectively, having looked at all of our clients, those that have either had a sprinkler system, the water tanks, or cleared out properly have had better success. Those are the ones that seem to have saved some of their property or only had it burned as opposed to it all going up. So I would say there's those efforts are definitely, those should keep going as we go forward. We shouldn't stop those because it's worked.
What kind of roof did you have?
I had just a normal 30-year shake roof, so far as I know.
Wood shake or
No,
composition shingle?
shingles, thank you. My husband built it.
I'm wondering if, I'm told that a lot of times the fire itself may be a ways away, but the embers come in the air if there's a wind, and they settle on the roof and sometimes gutters that have leaves.
Absolutely.
And then it's those embers that really are igniting the home.
Absolutely.
Not the radiant heat from the fire if it's far enough away.
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
So that means it might be wise to have metal roofs.
It could be, but it wouldn't necessarily be a save-all.
Yes. Yeah.
Wouldn't have saved yours?
Not necessarily. One of the other challenges that in speaking with fire departments during this whole situation, being a rural community, there's a lot of things that we have on our property that city owners don't have or city dwellers don't have. For example, I had a generator that had 75 gallons of diesel. I had propane tanks to run different generators. Some of those things, not thinking about a fire, they're on your patio, they're in your garage, they're next to a building. And so if those types of materials were to get hot enough, whether the fire was on top of you or not, they're going to explode. They're going to be an incinerator within your building or within that area. My husband and I were talking about a tree that we lost, and the only reason we lost it was because our generator was sitting underneath it. And so it had 75 gallons of diesel just burn.
Oh,
So people don't necessarily think about your tractor, your trucks, your quads, all of the equipment that we have to maintain our properties being part of a culprit in this situation.
well, it's so wonderful that you weren't hurt yourself, that you were able to get away and weren't burned.
And I believe that for
killed.
the whole community. I am still bewildered that there weren't more losses.
Yeah.
I am so thankful that weren't more losses, but that was one of my biggest concerns when we fled, was the lack of communication that was out there at that particular time. Not just myself, but I know individuals who were connected through social media at the minute, making comments about what was said on a scanner or what they were viewing from their area. And because of those social media connections, some of those individuals were able to save themselves that may have not otherwise had the opportunity.
They picked up and left.
Yes.
Without being told to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
The emotional toll is definitely something that,
yeah.
it's just, we talk about the fires and the structures and all these things,
Yeah.
but meeting a lot of these folks, it's just very, very resilient people, but it's very tough, very tough. Yeah. And luckily there's also resources too, just from the mental, depression or things like that that people are going through. There's resources for that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that's a big piece of the puzzle that might get overlooked in all of it too, because we're just thinking about the structures, but there's a lot of people have gone through a lot.
Yes.
Well, it's a major downer.
Yeah.
Did you have animals, like cats and dogs?
We did. I was able to get all of them out. We know of others that weren't as lucky. And that was, when you're evacuating, again, it's not one of those things that you necessarily plan for. It's a lot of space. I have 2 huskies, and the 2 of them combined are about 200 pounds. So in my little Jeep, that was 3/4 of our evacuation, which I would not have traded for the world.
Yeah.
But after the fact, you kind of realize, those are the important things. That is the important part of your life. And for all of those that lost animals and things that they weren't able to save, it's so close to their heart. That, like Dave said, I think that is what's the hardest part. People can rebuild, and this community knows how to do that.
Yeah.
It's the personal side of it that is going to be a harder recovery.
I have 3 cats, and one of which really loves me.
Yes.
The other 2 are so-so. So I think I'd want to save the cat that loves me.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that I think you touched on a little bit that the government can do that would make it easier on people and also protect their property rights? But there's the permitting process.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that reducing the fees.
Yeah.
And then the requirements, I think you mentioned, of the new codes are much more expensive to build.
Yes. Yeah.
And if they could grandfather the previous codes that they had before, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
Of course, there's some things in the new codes which would be helpful, particularly fire
Yes.
protection
Yes.
items.
Yes.
I don't know if internal sprinklers really.
That was actually my thought.
No.
I'm going to
Yeah.
opt for outside. I'm going to opt for
Outside sprinklers,
outside
yeah.
the roof. Yes.
So if you had a fire in the home,
Yes.
you got the smoke alarms now, which are required,
Right.
Yep.
and also you have CO2 detectors, which are required.
Absolutely.
And then to put sprinklers on top of that inside a home, I don't know, it might be a little bit of overkill.
Yeah. I make a joke because when I cook French fries, my smoke detector goes off because I use a stone. And the running joke was that I would have a fire, I'd have sprinklers going off every week that I
Oh,
made
if you had
French
it.
fries because they're, the smoke is that.
That happens with me with bacon.
Exactly.
Of course, I shouldn't say this on TV, but I've taken the batteries out of the ones in the kitchen. And I figured, well, if I have a fire, I got so many of the smoke alarms that go off,
Right.
and you can hear it all over, at least it won't be going off because of my bacon.
Yes.
That's right.
Is there any other things that could be done looking ahead that, well,
They could think of creative ways, maybe if the fees are substantial, to pay it over time, just for those that aren't just rebuilding because they want to rebuild, but because they have to because they lost their home in the fire.
Right.
I think there's some creative ways, whether grace periods or they can pay some of these fees over time. There's
Yeah.
probably creative ways they can think outside the box to give some relief out of, for those particularly that lost their home from the fire.
Yeah.
maybe, I never thought about that. Maybe a bond.
Yeah. Something. There's a deferment plan where you can file for your permit for your house and pay for the fees once your permit is issued, because there is a backlog and there's going to be a very large backlog as people start getting the okay to file those permits and those applications. One of the other things that I was thinking about on a very large scale is ordinances that have to do with emergency disaster preparedness as a county, period. One of the things that I kept running into is that there wasn't a particular organization in place in Calaveras County that would be disseminating all of this information, which is one of the reasons there's so many local agencies being grown, is because, the humble honeybee is taking care of this, the Resource Connection is taking care of this, Calaveras Grown is taking care of this, on and on and on and on, and they've all been built out of a gap that they've noticed. And one of the things moving forward that I think Calaveras County should really think about is a plan in place that is contingent for the disaster, if it ever were to happen again, that we could pick up, make a simple adjustment to, depending on weather and number of people, but have it in place so that it isn't a scramble 3 months after a disaster to put these things into place, to make sure that people aren't out in the cold. We as a community have always done a poor job with our homeless and have had gaps for individuals that need assistance. And I believe that this fire really highlighted how non-existent that is in our community. I believe there should be a place in this community that is known as a emergency shelter. We should have emergency provisions. There should be something in this community, God forbid this ever happen again, that somebody can say, we've got it, this is how we start, this is where we move forward.
Well, that would be, if it were comprehensive, that means each community would have its
Yes.
own emergency center,
Yes,
which could actually be a school.
yes. Or a town hall, or a
Right.
church, whatever that community could provide. One of the things that Calaveras is known for is its rurality, but that is such a difficult thing to manage in this situation. Railroad is its own community. Glencoe is its own community. Mountain Ranch is its own community. And that is a challenge, getting people into shelters, getting them resources, because they live, breathe, eat, work, sleep in Mountain Ranch, Glencoe, Railroad, wherever they happen to reside. Coming to San Andreas, as simple as it is for us that do it on a regular basis, a lot of those individuals, that's a monthly thing, or even a couple months. They go down once to get their
Grocery
groceries
stores.
or to make up, pay their bills, whatever it happens to be. But we are our counties and our little communities are so removed from each other
Yeah.
that was a blessing in disguise, because we were self-sufficient. Watching those videos of every ranch owner, everybody had a trailer, everybody had a truck, move those livestock and those animals out of that area. It was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal to watch. But it also showed again how rural we really are.
Right. It seems like things are different now than they were in the past. Communications has improved quite a bit with email and the internet.
Yeah.
And I wonder if an email list could be established for all the people in a particular area that have email, and that list would only be used for emergency purposes.
Yeah.
And then that way, the whole community in an instant can find out the latest reliable information.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You do see alerts. I've seen alerts when you're driving, if there's like a kidnapping or things like that. You've had police reach out. I've had on my cell phone alerts in that capacity, or
Yeah.
this person's on the loose. You'd think that you could also coordinate that for things like this. If there was a fire, God forbid, or something like that, where if everyone could have, through cell phone, email, or something.
One of the challenges that, again, was highlighted after the fire was out, individuals in the Mountain Ranch area, Glencoe, and Railroad Flat area don't have internet and cell phone service. It's an infrastructure that is lacking. It's not a personal choice. It's an
Right.
infrastructure. And to speak to that, Jackson Walmart sold 498 phones in 2 days after the fire.
Oh, wow.
So that shows,
Wow.
unfortunately, the lack of technological infrastructure and ease that is there. Currently, we have great cell phone service in Mountain Ranch area, but those towers will be taken down after the recovery efforts are done.
Right. Now, I understand that there's PG&E is offering immediately $10,000 for renters and $50,000 for property owners that had suffered loss.
Yeah, it's up to. And so, for the property owners, those would be those that lost their home and it was their primary residence. And so they could apply and submit a claim with PG&E and work with their claims people to see if they could get some form of reimbursement. And so that's a good step in the right direction, for sure, for some of those people. Unfortunately, for many, their losses far exceed those numbers. And so...
I guess it's almost a blessing that the PG&E probably was negligent and therefore liable. If it was started by somebody with a chainsaw, you wouldn't have that potentiality for...
Yeah.
Where's the
Yeah.
legal status now?
Yes.
We've got about a minute left.
Okay, so right now there's been a lot of lawsuits been filed, essentially against PG&E, Tree Trimming Company, and another company as well. And the goal is to make everybody whole. And so whether you're insured, you're underinsured, or have no insurance at all, the idea is to go forward with this lawsuit and try to get absolutely made whole for your tree loss, property loss, contents, and all of the pain and suffering as well.
Well, this has been a very good session. We really appreciate you coming. Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. See you next time.
Thank you.